Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to tell you all about the RTX 3060 Ti Asus Dual Mini and how I got it for £460, about £150 under retail pricing. So I'll be taking you through the specs of the card, its design, its performance, and then at the end of the video, after I've summarised it, I will give a little bit of my take on the current GPU market, which may help you decide if you want to pick up a card like this as of September 2021. This card is actually the Dual Mini V2. There is an original Dual Mini as well as a Dual Mini OC. The OC version, I believe, just has a measly 50 MHz boost to its base frequency compared to the original, and this is a tactic that a lot of card manufacturers have been pulling recently in order to essentially sell the exact same card but for a little bit more money. But this is actually the V2, and the only difference to the original is the fact that it's got a light hash rate, which means there's a mining limiter on this GPU, which I believe mostly affects Ethereum mining. However, there may be other cryptocurrencies that this affects. So let's talk about how I got this card for such a good price. I had been looking on eBay potentially to pick up a used RTX 3000 graphics card, and I saw this very card listed by Laptop Outlet. Now, Laptop Outlet are a proper company here in the UK. Their eBay account has over 100,000 reviews, and they have a website as well where they typically deal in refurbished and used electronics, such as laptops. They had this card listed for £522 with free shipping. And when I clicked on the listing, there was a little link that also said to take a discount on the item because they were a featured eBay seller. So this meant that the discount, which was 15% off up to £60, meant that I could take £60 off the price. So I actually only paid £462 for this card. I think there was maybe about 30 cards available in the listing. I only picked up one, and the listing was up for about an hour before it got taken down. That being said, let's get it out of the box. So here's a quick unboxing of the card. The internal box is actually quite a nice design, with the graphics card protected with foam, with a thank you, quick start and warranty card. The card itself is of course in an anti-static bag, and we'll take a closer look at the card now. So here's the card itself. I've got to say, I really like the front design of this card. The large dual fan design with what kind of looks like carbon fibre effect looks really nice in my opinion. The front does also have a little light strip which reaches onto the edge of the card, and it goes blue through purple. Unfortunately, I don't think you can change this, but it's a nice little bit of lighting. The back plate, however, is a bit more simplistic in design. It is made of aluminium, I believe, with a striped design, and it doesn't cover the full length of the cooler, and it does also have these cutouts on the back of the card as well. So I'm hoping that the backplate itself doesn't act like too much of an insulator for heat, but we'll need to see that in the temperature test. The card itself is a bit smaller in design compared to some other 3060 Ti's. Some manufacturers use 3070 coolers or even their RTX 3080 coolers on the 3060 Ti cards. It's more aimed at mini ITX cases, but I would have a little check to make sure that it will fit, but I think it should be fine for most cases. And from what I've seen compared to other small RTX 3060 Ti cards, it does appear to be a little bit better build quality than the ones by EVGA, PNY and NO3D. The dimensions itself is about 200mm long by about 125mm tall, and it's 40mm thick. So it is a proper dual slot card, and it only weighs about 550 grams. So it's quite a small cooler that's on this. It does feature 4 main heat pipes that spread throughout the entire cooler design, which covers the entire PCB, and as I showed before, a little bit beyond. It is on the small side because some coolers can be up to 1 kilo, I believe, on some of the large models, like the ROG Shreks, but we'll just need to see how it performs. It does of course take an 8-pin power connection and is rated for 200 watts, so I would recommend using a decent 650 watt power supply if you're looking to overclock it. However, the manufacturing guide does say to use 750 watt power supply. It's completely overkill in my opinion, but yeah, anything over 600 you should be fine. Lastly, in terms of the outputs for this card, it does feature 3 DisplayPort 1.4a ports and 1 HDMI 2.1 port, so it should have plenty of connectivity. In terms of the exact specs of the card, I've listed them on screen just now with the clock speeds and the core counts. A lot of these don't really mean anything on their own, but I felt necessary to include them anyway. The only thing is the core frequency does seem a bit low at the mid 1700s. Some of the higher end 3060 Ti's are nearly 2000 core frequency, so we'll have a little look at overclocking and see what it can do. The other thing of note is the fact that it only has 8GB of GDDR6 memory. This will be completely fine for 1080p, 1440p, but some titles at 4K you may be really struggling. For example, Doom Eternal I believe needs more than 10GB of video memory, so just be careful what kind of resolution you try to play at. Now we've had a good look at the card, we can now do the benchmarking. So I'm going to compare it to my 5700 XT, which kind of is on the same level to an RTX 3070 Super. What I'm hoping to achieve with this test is not really to show off exactly how well this can do in every game. There's already plenty of 3060 Ti benchmark videos out there. All I'm doing is making sure that this card performs to spec. So the games I'm going to test are Total War Warhammer 2, I'm also going to look at the Resident Evil 3 remake, as well as Cyberpunk 2077. First, I just want to talk about the benchmark system. I have a Ryzen 5 3600 on an MSI B450 motherboard running at stock frequencies. This is also paired with 2x16GB of DDR4 running at 3200 MHz CL18. What I did first was I overclocked the graphics card so I can compare stock versus overclocked performance. The stock clock frequency was 1755 MHz, which was a bit higher than the initial stated frequency on their website. I overclocked this to 1980 MHz, and it frequently boosted all the way up to 2040 MHz, which is quite impressive. The memory frequency was at stock 7000, which is pretty typical for a lot of these 3060 Ti's for GDDR6 memory. I saw in a lot of people's overclocking guides as well as their tutorials that they were able to get this memory up to 8000 MHz pretty easily. However, mine maxed out at 7700 MHz before I started encountering issues. In the Unison Heaven benchmark, which I was using to overclock with the MSI tool, the average FPS went from 123 up to 133, showing a noticeable improvement. The first game I benchmarked was Total War Warhammer 2 on Ultra settings using the in-game battle benchmark. This is a game I play quite frequently, so the performance in this matters quite a lot to me. On the right hand side graph you can see the RX 5700 XT, and ideally in a game like this we'd be looking at 60 FPS average with decent 1% low performance, and the AMD graphics card actually performs quite well here at 1080p and 1440p, and does alright at 1440p ultra wide with a reasonably robust performance. The RTX 3060 Ti on the left hand side here does beat it at all resolutions at average FPS. The overclocked performance at 1440p also shows some improvement over the original 1440p performance. What is to note here is the 0.1% and 1% low performance was significantly lower than the AMD RX 5700 XT. There must be some sort of issue with Nvidia's drivers in this game, and it is kind of disappointing to me that the 1% low performance is so poor compared to the 5700 XT. The second game I benchmarked was the Resident Evil 3 remake using high settings, and I couldn't use any higher settings like Ultra due to the texture limit and the 8GB of available memory on both graphics cards. I used the initial 5 minutes of the game to test because there was a good amount of low lighting and bright lighting settings, as well as fast paced and slow paced mechanics in these 5 minutes. On the right hand side for the 5700 XT, this graphics card actually performs extremely well in this title, and it's quite a well optimized game. At 1080p and 1440p, the FPS results were really good. However, at 1440p ultra wide, it sort of loses its performance when stuttering starts to enter. As you can see here at the 0.1% low of 7 FPS, it really suffers from this stuttering behaviour. On the left hand side we have the RTX 3060 Ti, which quite clearly beats out the 5700 XT across the board. What's interesting to note is the overclocking performance at 1440p. It showed a slight decrease in performance, but I would assume this is anywhere in a run-to-run variance, so there wasn't really any difference between the overclocked and the standard 1440p performance. It may be that the processor and the memory were the limiting factor in this scenario, and the overclocking of the graphics card didn't really improve the performance of the game. The third title I tested was Cyberpunk 2077 on Ultra settings. I tested the game in an enclosed area during an intense firefight in one of the earlier missions within the game. I felt this area was quite a good place to test due to the large amount of particle effects and moving objects in the game. On the left hand side we just have the 5700 XT results, and at 1080p it did not too bad, and at 1440p it averaged above 30 FPS. In a title like this, above 30 FPS is usable so long as there isn't too much stuttering and low 1% or 0.1% performance. At 1440p ultra-wide, the 5700 XT simply just can't keep up, and you can see that with the 5 FPS 0.1% low performance. The 3060 Ti results are quite extensive, but we'll just look at the first three results first, which is just the standard resolution performance. Across all three of these resolutions, it handily beats out the 5700 XT, and it shows quite good performance at 1440p with an average of 47 FPS. The 1440p and DLSS results, where DLSS was set to quality preset, which is its lowest preset, it saw the FPS get to 60 average at 1440p, which is really impressive. The ray tracing results were set to medium lighting without ray traced reflections. At 1440p with just ray tracing, the game doesn't perform that well, and at below 30 FPS quite commonly with its 1% loads. At 1440p with DLSS and ray tracing set to medium, at 46 average FPS it actually performed the same as just standard 1440p gaming. This is really impressive. DLSS is allowing us to use ray tracing but still achieve the exact same results at 1440p. You can see at the bottom of this graph as well, when the graphics card was overclocked, it didn't really gain any additional performance in this section either. I think again it has an issue to do with just the single core performance of my processor and my slightly slower memory, that the graphics card isn't able to really show what it can do, and it's being held back slightly by the CPU as well as the memory. I should also note that performance could also be improved not only by a better CPU and memory configuration, also by enabling Nvidia's resizable bar, as well as using a PCIe Gen 4 compatible motherboard. The last thing I'm just going to show you here is just the tableized results of the comparison between the RTX 3060 Ti and the RX 5700 XT. Really what I'm showing you is this table in the bottom left, where you can see the resolution and mean average FPS. What we would expect is the RTX 3060 Ti to be around 20 to 25% better at most resolutions compared to the 5700 XT. You can see in this case it is. Therefore, this graphics card is performing to spec. So let's talk about temperature testing. Now, whenever I stress tested this card or played different games, it never really went above 70 degrees Celsius at 85% fan speed. This is the stock fan curve configuration for temperature versus fan speed, so it seems as if it's designed to stay below 70 degrees Celsius and constantly ramp up the fans to keep below there. What I did note is when I set the card to 80% fan speed, the temperatures did rise to 75 degrees and it remained there. But this was still far below the thermal limit of 83 degrees on this card, so I had utterly no issues with thermal throttling. The core frequency never had to drop to compensate for the temperature. The only issue I had with the thermal testing for this card is that the fans don't kick in until it hits 50 degrees C. Because this card has such a small cooler design on it, when you're at idle, just browsing the internet or whatever, it immediately goes up to 50 degrees C and sits there. So your computer itself will output quite a lot of heat because this is just sitting at 50 degrees all the time. So maybe adjust the fan curve so the fans switch on at maybe 30%, and this way you'll keep your card nice and cool at idle. Do keep in mind that this temperature testing was done in a decent airflow ATX case with Noctua fans. So if you've got a mini ITX case where the card's going to be right next to an air vent, the temperatures might be better, but if you've got a really low airflow ATX case, you may really struggle to keep the temperatures down. In terms of noise, as I said, the fans themselves don't turn on until it reaches 50 degrees, so at idle it's perfectly fine, it doesn't make any noise. I don't have any official means of testing it, for example with a decibel meter, but again, measuring stuff in decibel doesn't really mean anything without a reference. What I will say is I didn't really notice the fans until it reached about 70%, and then it didn't start to become slightly louder than the rest of the system until it was about 80%. It wasn't annoying at all, it was just generic fan noise, so while I was gaming, I had utterly no issues with the noise this card made. The only exception to this was a strange coil whine-like noise that I experienced when doing my Resident Evil 3 at 1080p tests. For some reason, even on the menu screen, the card started to emit this weird sound, so I will submit a ticket to Asus and ask them what's up with that, and if I get a response, I'll put it down in the comments, but it was a peculiar one. I only experienced it in that one game. Now that the testing's done, I can give an overview of the card and talk a little bit about the GPU market. What I will say is the RTX 3060 Ti is a perfectly good 1440p, 1080p, and sometimes indeed 1440p ultra-wide gaming card. And the fact that this also includes DLSS, ray tracing, NVENC encoding is all just icing on the cake really. And they're definitely all features that I will use going forward, especially the NVENC encoding. Considering £500 in the previous generation would have got you a 2070 Super, and now for £500 or less than £500, I got 2080 Super-like performance. It's not a bad step up for the price. It wouldn't have been my first choice, the Asus Dual Mini. I probably would have went for a Gigabyte card or the Asus Tough model, something with a larger, cooler design, simply because I could fit it in my case perfectly fine. If, like me, this is the only option you have of a new generation card, I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all with this Asus Dual Mini. I mean, the performance was to spec, it didn't have any temperature issues, it generally didn't have any issues with noise. Yeah, I'm thoroughly impressed with this little card, it's pretty good. So what I will say is, if you can spend about £500 and you're perfectly happy to do so, you're not going to be disappointed by this card. So the issue is, in the UK, the GPU market is a mess, and as I've said, in retail prices, they're typically around £620 brand new. Well, on eBay, a used or open box card tends to sell for around £600. The prices did initially drop when the light hash rate cards came onto market, as miners weren't really looking to buy these, but the issue is, everyone else who was just looking for a graphics card ended up going up towards that £600 mark. Unfortunately, a lot of these cards now, even with the mining limiter on them, are basically back up to £600. What I can recommend is going to eBay on a Friday, a Saturday or a Sunday. This is because eBay has reduced selling fee at the weekend, meaning that companies are more likely to list these cards at the weekend for better prices to entice people to buy them. Hi everyone, it's Jonah in editing here, and I just wanted to show you some additional proof of this. This is a listing that was made on the 13th of September, which is actually a Monday, but it's for a Zotac 3060Ti for £476.22. When we take a closer look at the listing, we can see it was made by Scan Computers, which are a very popular computing retailer here in the UK, and you can see that they sold at least 5 of these cards for £476.22 with free shipping, and there were still 9 available when that post got taken down. There's a chance that more of these cards will be listed by sellers like Scan and Laptop Outlet in the coming months, so keep an eye out on eBay for these kind of deals. Moreover, if they are a large seller on eBay, they tend to do discounts at the weekend as well, like 10% off, 15% off, and you'll see this on the listing itself. Right next to the price there'll be a little line, and you can click on that and it'll take you to the discount code, so you could save yourself even more money like I did. I should note at this point in the video, I was actually perfectly satisfied with the performance of my 5700 XT. The only reason I decided to actually buy this card was because I noticed my particular variant of the 5700 XT was selling for £600 used on eBay because of its popularity for cryptocurrency mining. So this meant that I could afford to buy a new graphics card and then sell the old one for a profit, which just makes complete sense in my mind. So what if you're looking for a GPU upgrade? Well, what I can say is this: I would seriously consider if you need an upgrade. The entire tech industry, whether it's mobile phones or graphics cards, exists to do one thing. They want to convince you to buy their brand new product that is better than ever before and gives you more performance and has all these special features. But if you're happy with the performance that you already have, my advice is to hold firm where you are. These cards are way overpriced from what they should be. And if you wait until 2022, hopefully both Nvidia and AMD will start to release cards that have an MSRP of less than £300. What's more to the point as well, Intel will be joining the dedicated graphics market soon as well, and with a third player on the scene, it could influence supply and demand as well as the pricing. So you may actually be able to get a good price on a graphics card by next year. What I would say though, the only exception to that, is if you're sitting in the position that I am, where you've bought a graphics card that is really, really popular for mining, and now because of that, it's worth a lot more than a brand new graphics card. In which case it kind of makes sense to sell and then buy an upgrade, but be careful of scams. There's a lot of issues right now with people stealing cards or stealing your money, so just be aware of the risks. What if you're looking to get into PC gaming for the first time, and you've seen this graphics card and you've never built a computer before? What I would say is if you have £500 to £600, but you don't mind just blowing on a graphics card, you don't mind that it's £200 more expensive than it should be, then, well, it's only worth whatever it's worth to you. If you don't mind spending that money, then sure, you won't be disappointed by picking up something like this for 1080p and 1440p gaming. But if you have a strict budget that you're set with and you want to get good value, maybe look at AMD's RX 470, 480 or 570, 580 and pick them up used on eBay. The same goes for the GTX 900 series and 1000 series by Nvidia. You may be able to get a good value from these cards until down in the future when hopefully the market recovers. Outside of this, if you aren't really focused on PC gaming, you just want to get into gaming in general, a used PS4 or a used Xbox One is the best value you can get. I think you can get these consoles now used for less than £100, and then you can just pay into their subscription services to get access to dozens, if not hundreds of games, and their online available libraries. That is by far the easiest way to get into gaming right now. So there we have it, that's my review of Asus Dual Mini RTX 3060Ti. You can let me know what you thought about this video, or if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below and I will be checking the comments regularly. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like or share it. Growth in that aspect really helps the channel, and I'd be really appreciative if you could do that. And if you'd like, feel free to get subscribed. I will be doing more videos on different tech, and I'll also be doing live streams on this very channel for me playing different games. Thanks very much, and I hope to see you next time.